Welcome back friends to the part 2 of what we can learn from Anand and Carlsen games. In part 1 I covered the games 1 to 5. I left you at the stage when Carlsen had won the 5th game and was leading the match with a score of 3-2. The match was very interestingly poised still, because the first 4 games were quite evenly contested. If Anand could win one game now, that is game 6 or 7, the match would become very interesting. And hence, in this part 2, I have come with the analysis of the games 6 to 10. So, what are we waiting for? Let's dive in to the 6th game of the match, which turned out to be an excellently played endgame by Magnus Carlsen. This is the position that has been reached after 37 moves in game number 6. It's white to play. Anand, who is white, has a bad position because he has these 2 weak pawns, doubled pawns. However, the position is not so bad that it cannot be defended. White has to play very patiently here, clinging on to his weaknesses. However, Anand tried to play actively and he made the move Queen G3. Carlsen immediately took the pawn on E4, and after Queen into D6, Rook into E3, Queen E7, Rook E7. Black was a pawn out in the Rook endgame. The point that White was looking for was to play here Rook D5 and attack the pawn on B5, when after that Black is forced to play Rook B7. Let us assess this position. White is a pawn down. Anand didn't require to give the pawn back, but he did that because he thought that this position is pretty safe to make a draw. The main reason being he has an active rook on b5 against Black's passive rook. However, we all know that when you have a material deficit against Magnus, it is very difficult to play. He will keep on grinding you, and till you make a mistake, he will keep on playing. This is something similar to what happens in the game. Let us try to see. Anand played Rook to D6, F6. Black plans to bring his king over to the queen side. H4. This was a very interesting move. And over here, Carlsen made a mistake. He played King F7. Usually, Carlsen is very alert to the dangers in the position. In the press conference after the game, he said he totally underestimated White's next move, which was H5. And therefore, he himself should have played the move H5 over here. And a sample variation could be King G3, Rook to E7, planning to transfer the rook to E5. After Rook B6, Rook E5, Rook B7 check, King H6, Rook B6, Rook F5, King H3, G5, HG, King G5. Black has got good winning chances, as he would want to bring his king over to the queen side and attack the white pawns. Okay, but Carlsen over here played King F7, and Anand was very alert and played the excellent move H5. He is a pawn down, but he sacrifices another pawn because he understands that with this move H5, he can make the pawns, black pawns on the king side, totally worthless. So after the move GH5, you can see that Black has got 3 pawns, F6, H6, H5 against White's 1 pawn, but it's very difficult to create a passer now. So Anand played Rook D5, King G6, King G3, Rook b6. What black is trying to achieve is to maximize his activity by playing f5, and only then later on trying to activate his rook via e6 to e4 or e2. Okay, so rook c5, f5. Now black threatens to activate his king to g5, and Anand played king to h4. Maybe king f4 was similar, but okay, king h4 doesn't spoil anything. So rook e6. The threat now is to give a check on e4. Of course, now white has to take the pawn on b5. And Anand Carlsen played rook to e4 check. White played his king to h3. I wonder if Anand would have played his king to g3, I think the draw would have been easier to achieve, because after king g5, rook b8, h4, he has the king on f3 instead of the square h3, where I think that the white king was not so well placed in the game on h3. So I think Anand should have gone for king g3 to f3, and this should be a pretty easy draw. Okay, after king h3, black played king g5. To the viewers of the game, it was still not clear as to what black was trying for, because the point is, over here, it's not so easy to win. The only plan that black has in this position is to bring his king over here to the queen side pawns. So therefore, I think over here, a very practical decision, and I think it would have been in the spirit of the way Anand was playing the game, like he sacrificed first the pawn on e4, then he sacrificed the pawn on h5. So I think he could have sacrificed one more pawn with the move b3 here. And after that, black gives rook e3 check, king h2, rook into c3, b takes c4, rook takes c4. And we reach this position. Now what black would be trying here to do is to create a position where he has a passed pawn, but as you can see here, it's extremely difficult to create a passer. And even in the worst case scenario for white, I think the best that black can achieve is to get an f and h pawn versus no pawn for white. And in the theory of endgames, rook endgames, f and h pawns plus rook against a rook is a theoretical draw. Of course, it's not so easy to defend, but that would be the best case scenario that black can hope for in this position. And I still am not sure as to how black would be able to create a passed pawn here. So I think the move b3 would have been very interesting here, sacrificing another pawn and making a draw. But I think Anand was very confident that he would be able to draw this position, and hence he played rook to b8. And after the move h4, he gave a check on g8. So Carlsen played his king to h5. I think it would be a little bit early to go king f4 here, because I think white can just win a pawn with king into h4. So king h5, rook f8, and black played rook to f4, and white played rook c8. In fact, in this position, it's very easy to play as white, because whichever pawn is undefended, you just keep attacking that. So after rook g4, the f pawn is undefended, so Anand attacked it. Now black played rook g3 check, king h2, king g5, and now we come to the very interesting part of the game. Over here, I think Anand started to lose his sense of danger, and he thought that it's an easy draw. But I think over here it was necessary to play the move rook to c8. The point is that it's now the c4 pawn is attacked, so king f4 makes no sense. Black has only moved to go back rook g4. And now after king h3, black is it's very difficult to make progress as black. So I think he has to play something like rook e4, and now rook g8, king f4, let's say rook c8. I think king h4 was also pretty okay, but rook c8, king e3, rook h8, king d3, rook into h6, king c2, rook b6, and I think white is just in time to make a draw. Like rook g4, he can make this move, rook to b4, and after king d3 comes b3, a very nice simplifying move, king into c3, rook c4, rook c4, bc4, king c4. As you can see, after king h4, this is a very simple draw. But over here in this position, instead of playing rook c8, which would have given him an easy draw, Anand went for rook to g8, and now Carlsen immediately played his king to f4, and when Anand played his rook to c8, Carlsen showed what his intentions were, and he played his king to e3. I think at this point Anand really started to get nervous, because black has a very clear plan now. The plan is that after Anand took the pawn on c4 to play f4, and black will now play h3, and after white takes gh3, the f pawn will be a passed pawn. The main reason why black would be better in such positions is because his pawn is already so close to the queening square, while white, who has the connected passers here, are still quite behind in the race. So I would say that this is the critical position of the game, and maybe the entire match, because in this position, if Anand would have been able to find the only move, I think there is only one way to draw in this position, and if he would be able, and he had plenty of time actually to find the right move, but he moved instantly, and he played the move rook to a4, which turned out to be a blunder. So I will give you a task over here. Take your time and try to find what is the best way for white to make a draw. Okay, so the main thing over here, let's try to understand this position properly. First, let us say that what happens if I move my rook to say c6 or c8. Let's say I go to c6. Now white plays the natural, the black plays the natural move king f2, because the pawn is no longer attacked on f4, and now the g2 pawn cannot be defended. So white plays rook f6, rook takes g2, king h3, f3, king h4, rook h2, king g4, h5. You can see that in this position the f3 pawn is too advanced for white to have any successful, any realistic chance of making a draw. So after king g5, king g2, b4, f2, b5, queens, king takes c4, black just plays rook c2 and he wins the game. So you see that to the move rook c6 or to rook c8, any move for that matter which loses its control over the f4 pawn, black just plays king f2 and attacks the pawn on g2. So we understand that we need to keep the rook on the 4th rank. Now, if what Anand played in the game was rook a4, which you might say is logical, it keeps an eye on the f4 pawn. But the problem is that the rook actually did nothing with that move. There was no point in that move in a way. What Anand was, I think, trying to do was to clear the pawns by playing b4 and c4 and then give horizontal checks with rook a3, rook a2. But the point is that over here it becomes very difficult to achieve in the game. So here white should have played the move b4. I think I'm trying to explain it too logically, but intuitively you should be feeling that you have to push the pawns. And Anand wasn't able to solve all these problems during the game. It was very difficult for him with Magnus sitting with great confidence opposite him. So after the move b4, I think the only way for black to make any progress is to sacrifice the pawn h3 so that he can get past f pawn, and after gh3 he has to move his rook g6, and rook goes back to c8. You just see that as compared to the main game, the pawn being on b4, this crucial tempo makes a huge difference. So after f3, check on e8, king d2, b5. Now I think black has to play f2, rook f8, king e2, rook e8 check, king f1, c4. And the only winning plan for black now can be something like rook to d6, to d1, to e1, and then remove his king. But as you can see, these pawns have already advanced so far that it's almost impossible to execute that long plan. So I think black has to now just give a perpetual check with rook g2, king h1, rook g1, king h2, rook g2, and take a draw. There was also another interesting idea that we should see here. b4, so let's say Anand would have made the best move in this position, b4, then after h3, gh3, rook g6, rook c8, f3 check, king d2, and now b5. And here black could try for another idea, that is rook g2. This is a very interesting idea. The point is, I want to put my rook on e2 and then put my king on e1 and play f2, f1. So king h1, rook e2, rook f8, f2. Now black is simply going to play king e1 and queen his pawn. But you can see here the advantage of pushing the pawn to b4, b5 is that I have my own pawn which is racing ahead now. b6, king e1, and b7. So black has to now stop the pawn from queening, so rook b2, and after rook e8 check, rook e2, rook f8, black has to attack again, and it's already a draw with rook e8 check again. So you can see that this move b4, b5, with which you started pushing your pawns, is actually a good defensive idea because you yourself are threatening to queen. Okay, so it was quite a complicated analysis, but I think we can gain a lot of ideas in the rook endgame. So in this position, Anand played the move rook a4, and again, as you know, the only way to make progress now is to play, yes, h3, and after g into h3, black played his rook back to g6. And I think over here Anand already felt that he had botched it up, and the point is, if you remove the pawns from b2 and c3, white has a very easy draw here because he has the horizontal checks on rook a3, rook a2, all these squares. But because of the white pawns, it's a win for white. So Anand tries to clear the ranks, but he is too slow. After c4, Carlsen plays f3, and I would like to show you that variation in which white tries to defend from the rear end with rook a8, but over here comes rook g2, king h1, and this idea again with rook e2. The black king is now going from d2 to e1 and queening the pawn. So after rook e8, king d2, rook f8, f2, b4, you can see that white pawns are too far behind and black just queens and wins after just putting his rook back. So that tempo which was wasted with rook a4 turned out to be very crucial. So after c4, which Anand played f3, rook a3, king e2, b4. Now the files have been cleared, but the the ranks have been cleared, but the black pawn has already reached the 7th rank. And after f2, rook a2 check, king e3, rook a3 check, king f4, and I think it's already game over. Many of the people said that Anand was looking to play over here rook to a1, but I think after rook e6, this is the move which he might have missed. Rook e1 is threatened and king g2, rook e1 is just winning. So instead of that, Anand went rook a8 trying to be tricky, but Carlsen just played rook g1 and f1 queen cannot be stopped on the next move. A beautiful game by Carlsen, who used the minimal advantage in the position to win, and he took a 2-0 lead, that the score became 4-2 after 6 games in the favor of Carlsen. I agree that the analysis of endgame was very huge, but you will have to agree that Carlsen played simply magnificently to win the position from 37th move onwards, in which he had a small edge and he converted it into a win against the world champion Vishwanathan Anand. But what do we have to learn from such endgames? The point that I'm trying to make over here is that once I was listening to a lecture by Lê Quang Liem on YouTube, and in a position which was similar to this rook endgame, where there were a lot of possibilities, he said that he put his head down and he calculated for around half an hour, and he saw right up till the end that he was winning the game. And when I tried to see that position and analyze it, I set it up on my chessboard, I couldn't even think one move ahead. I couldn't understand what would be my opponent's reply to each of my moves that I would make. The point which I'm trying to make is that when we try to analyze endgames, it is often that we are unable to guess what our opponents would play to each of the moves that we make, because there are so many possibilities. In the middle game, when we solve combinations, we are very good at it. We are very good at trying to calculate variations because we continuously practice that skill. Whereas in endgame, I don't think many of us analyze rich endgames which have a lot of possibilities. We study endgames like basic theoretical endgames like Philidor, Lucina. We are very good at it. But when we start to have a complicated endgame, that is when we start to lose our ground. We start to become jittery. We don't know what to play. So my suggestion to you would be to take endgames which are rich. Like, for example, there is a book called Capablanca's Best Endgames, and in that, maybe just to take a position and try to analyze it. Maybe you can move the pieces, try to play it against a friend, or you can just sit down and analyze, and slowly and steadily with practice, I think you will surely be able to improve your analytical skills in the endgame. And with that, I think you too will be able to press minute advantages like Carlsen and convert a lot of half points into that full point, and that would have a great bearing on your tournament results and even rating. Game number 7 and 8 were nothing special. The players came to the board, exchanged a few pieces, and maybe just made a few moves and agreed for a draw in both the games. In game number 8, we even reached the pawn endgame. So Carlsen was very happy with these results because he already had a 2-point lead. But what about Vishy Anand? How was he happy with these 2 draws? I think a true test of a champion is how he reacts in a situation that is unfavorable for him. In this situation, when Anand was trailing by 2 points and his back was totally against the wall, I think he reacted in a very practical manner. The point was that after games 5 and 6, Anand was mentally destroyed. In both the games he had draws to be taken, but he was not able to find the accurate defense and he lost the games. In such a situation, if he would have gone all guns blazing in game number 7 or in 8, I think he would have lost another few games and that would have ended the match. Of course, maybe if it were Topalov or maybe some more aggressive player, he would have done exactly like that, attacked in the game number 7 and 8. But Anand took a very pragmatic decision. He took some rest in games number 7 and 8, mentally tried to refresh himself. In this way, he shifted the balance totally to game number 9. And his team of seconds got some time during these 2-3 days to prepare one d4 with white, which he tried in game number 9. A very intelligent decision by Anand, I must say, but the total downside to it was that the window of opportunity for him to make a comeback was very small. Game number 9 was the only game that he had now in which he could press Carlsen. So let's go to the game number 9 and see the most interesting game of the match and how it was played. Welcome, dear friends, to the most exciting game of the match, game number 9. Transport yourself to 21st November 2013. Vishy Anand is trailing by 2 points. Only 4 games remain in the match. It's do or die for him, and he begins with the move d4. It was a really exciting time for all the spectators because Anand had come out for a full-fledged battle against Carlsen. So Carlsen opened with the Nimzo-Indian defense and Anand chose the most sharp variation with f3, the same-ish variation. d5, a3, bishop into c3, bc3, c5. Black gives up his bishop but tries to use his lead in development. After cd5, Carlsen played e into d5. A very committal decision. The point is that in this position, knight into d5 has been long considered to be the safe option. And the main line goes dc5, queen a5, e4, knight f6, and black has a solid position, but I am sure Team Anand must have worked out some kind of a novelty in this position. So Carlsen took e into d5. The point is that after e3, this structure is excellent for white because he would like to put his bishop on d3, knight e2, let's say, then just castle it out, put his knight on g3 and try for e4 when he would have the 2 bishops, center control and everything going for him. It would be my advice to each one of you to check out the game between Botvinnik and Capablanca from the 1936 Avro tournament to check this plan of central expansion. But Carlsen had a very specific move in mind, and that was c4. He put a stop to this entire plan of bd3, knight e2, knight g3. This is a very committal decision because he loses the flexibility in the center. Now if white is somehow able to engineer the e4 break, then he will have a better position. So here Anand played knight e2, knight c6, and a very interesting move, that was g4. The point is, Anand would like to develop his bishop to g2, then knight to g3 and castle, and then start his offensive with maybe e4. So Carlsen played castles, bg2, knight to a5 and short castle. The black knight came to b3 and Anand played a nice move, rook to a2. The rook can later move along the second rank after the knight clears out, let's say knight to g3, and the rook can come to f2 where it can be an excellent attacking piece. Carlsen started his queenside play with b5. After knight g3, a5, white played g5, knight e8, e4. So Anand has been able to achieve what he wanted to. He has got the e4 break. He has got excellent attacking chances on the king side with his knight very well placed. On g3, looking at squares like f5 and h5. He has got this good, excellent center control. His rook is all ready to swing into the game, and his bishop is ready to move out, let's say to e3, and make this knight look very stupid on b3. So before that happens, Carlsen took on c1, queen c1, rook a6. This is a very nice tricky defense that Carlsen does, using his rook along the 6th rank. In fact, in this game in this World Championship match, many a times Carlsen developed his rooks in such a way that they got activated not along the files but along the ranks. Okay, so Anand played the move e5. The point is, he wants to now play f4, f5 and then maybe f6, when he would have excellent attacking chances. So knight went to c7, f4. There is no subtlety about Anand's play here. He is going for the throat. He doesn't want to just try to be too subtle, or he would try to make some positional moves, nothing like that. He wants to attack this guy. This is his aim, and he is all prepared to do that. So Carlsen has to be very alert now, and I think the next move is very interesting, and he plays b4. He tries to initiate queenside counterplay because that's the only way he can survive here. So here Anand took on b4, but many people said that it would have been much more logical to play f5 and not allow the exchange of rooks, because in such positions, if say the pawn does reach on b3 and let's say the rook comes to f2, then white has better attacking chances, because with these two rooks the b3 pawn is not such a huge threat, and the attack on the king side might become very decisive. So you can say that a into b4 was maybe not the best move. Carlsen took a b4, rook a6, knight a6 and Vishy played f5. The next move coming up is f6. Carlsen now went for complete broke. He went b3 over here. Very good move. I would say, I mean, not exactly the move that one would say is excellent, or maybe it's a very practical decision. He sees that he is losing the battle on the king side, and he tries to create a passed pawn which is just 2 steps away from queening. Well, Anand now thought for a very long time in this position. He was trying to search for a concrete win, and he played over here queen f4. Okay, so the threat is very simple. He would like to play f6 and force black to play g6. And to later transfer his queen from h4 into h6 and threaten mate. So Carlsen fights against this plan by putting his knight from c7 to e8. You can see from here that he played very quickly. This was a very nice psychological ploy by Carlsen. First of all, Anand took a lot of time in his attack, but what Carlsen did is that he sensed that Anand was nervous, and when your opponent is nervous, Carlsen started to play quickly, and this put added pressure on Anand. So after knight c7, f6, over here gf6 is also a very interesting move, but I think humanly g6 looks much more natural. Anand played queen h4, threatening queen to h6, and once again Carlsen played instantly knight e8. Now the queen goes to h6. Okay, over here I would like to show you one very interesting line which I have won a few games in blitz, and with this mating pattern I'm sure many of you must be aware, but yet I would just show you. After king h8, queen h6, threatening a mate on g7, black, if he plays rook g8, then this idea is met with a very strong move, rook f4. The point is that if suppose black plays b2, is a very nice mate with queen h7, king h7, rook h4. This idea is very common and maybe one which you should keep it in your arsenal in the mating patterns. Okay, so after knight e8, Anand once again played queen h6. His idea is now to go rook to f4 and to h4, but Carlsen played b2. Now there are two ways to continue the attack. One is to introduce this knight with knight e2 to f4, which is a very interesting way to attack, and I think many people suggested this way. But the second one is Vishy's approach, and I would say this one was very exciting from the point of view of viewers. Vishy just lifted his rook up the board and let black make a whole queen. Now this turned out to be a real great excitement for viewers, because I think in a world championship match, after just 27 moves, one never sees a new queen being made, and yet the game being very interesting. So after b1 queen, over here white has only one move to continue the battle, and that is bishop to f1. Now the threat is rook h4 and to mate, so the only defense is queen d1, and after rook h4 to go queen h5. So white has to take knight h5, gh, rook h5. There's a mate on h7, so bishop f5. And over here white has to come up with the move g6, which is very interesting. And after bishop g6, white plays rook g5. The threat is very simple, to play h4 h5, when white will have a very dangerous attack. So black has to give the piece back with knight f6, ef6, queen f6 and rook d5, and the position is maybe equal and the game would end in a draw. So I am sure that Anand analyzed all these things, because these are pretty forcing variations, and for player of Anand's stature they are not too difficult. But what was here in action was more than just the board position, was also the psychological battle. because over here Anand had to win the game. If he didn't win, then I think he had already lost his chances. So bishop f1 was leading to a drawish position, and so he immediately moved the knight to f1 and thought that this is winning. But of course he missed the move queen e1, and after this it's all over. I mean, rook goes to h4, then queen into h4, and white is an entire rook down. And if not rook h4, then what? I mean, it's just game over. Anand was sitting at the board with his head in his hand. He knew that it was all over. He was 2 points down, and over here, if he resigned the game, and with that, the Norwegian team erupted in joy. Carlsen was 3 points up in the match with just 3 games to go. It was almost all over. The 9th game of the match was excellent. You must agree that it's not every day that we see a queen being made on 27 move, and at the same time a rook blunder by the world champion. And it was overall a very nice entertainer for the viewers. But what can we learn from this game? First of all, you have to agree that Carlsen was under great pressure in this game. So how was he able to save himself? Was it just a miracle, or were there certain things that Carlsen did which made Anand to make the mistakes? Well, I think that Carlsen did 2 things in particular which put a lot of pressure on Anand. First of all, it was his body language, which was excellent during the game. He played with great confidence, and he would really play his moves in a manner which showed that he was not at all nervous about white's attack. He would get up from the board with great confidence, come and sit on the board, think with great concentration. All this, in a way, affects your opponent to a certain extent. The second thing which Carlsen did very well was that when he was under pressure, he started making his moves very quickly. He knew that his knight had to be brought in to e8 from a6. So he played his moves knight c7, knight e8 very quickly. To f6, he made his move g6 very quickly. And then the moves b2 and b1 were also made very fast. All this put so much pressure on Anand. Now, these all moves were pretty forced, but how many of us would be able to play these moves even without a few seconds of thought? It's very difficult, and it requires great self-confidence. And I think it was this confidence which really made Anand to make the final blunder of playing knight to f1. Hence, I think the main thing which we can learn from this game is how to remain confident even when you are under a terrible attack from your opponent. Game 10 of the match turned out to be the last game, and what an excellent game it was. Carlsen began the game with e4 and played the bishop b5 check variation in the Sicilian. He got a very nice Marozzi bind kind of a position, as you can see on the board. He has the space advantage and a very nice position. He risks absolutely nothing. Over here he played the move queen to d2, and this creates an unpleasant threat of knight d5, and if queen into d2, then knight takes e7, intermediate check. So Anand played king f8, and Carlsen continued with queen to b2. Now there is a pressure on the g7 pawn, so Anand went back king to g8. And I guess if Carlsen would have played his queen back to d2, then Anand would have played king f8, Queen B2, and we would have had a new world champion at that moment itself. Carlsen was already on 6 points and needed only a draw to become the world champion. But look at his fighting spirit. In this position, instead of going back Queen D2, he played A4. He continued to gain space on the board, and after Queen H5, he played Knight E2, Bishop F6, Rook C3. You can see that this rook is planning to go to maybe G3. The knight could come someday to F4, and overall it would be a very strong attack. So in this position, Anand took on D4, Rook D4, Queen E5, Queen D2, Knight F6, Rook E3, and it seemed as if White is in good control. After Rook D7, he clamped the queenside pawns with A5. And over here, I think Anand, who was by now completely tired in the match, made a very uncharacteristic blunder with Queen G5. This allowed a killer move. You could just think for a minute, and I think you can easily find it. E5 was the strong move. The pawn is pinned, and so black has to play Knight to E8. And here Carlsen made a mistake, which he said after the game that he missed something over here, and that's the reason why he took on D6. For otherwise over here, black doesn't really threaten to take on E5, so White could strengthen his position with Knight C3. The next plan is to play B4, B5. So let's say the threat is also Knight E4 to Knight D6. Therefore Rook C6, if then B4, Rook D8, B5, AB, CB, Rook C7, ED6, and White is clearly winning in this position. Okay, Carlsen took on D6 a little bit prematurely, and after Rook C6 he was losing the pawn. So F4, Queen D8, Rook D3, Rook takes D6. Mass exchanges followed, and we reached this knight endgame, in which White has a small advantage for sure, because not only is his pawn on A5 clamping these two pawns, but also the White king has a very clear route to the queen side. Anand defended pretty well, and the game ended in a draw, but only after they played for 65 moves, and after that, in the end of those moves, Carlsen won the game. Carlsen drew the game and won the world championship with 6.5 to 3.5 points. After game number 10, we have a new world champion. Carlsen had won the world championship match with a score of 6.5 to 3.5 points. But the last game proved to be the best game from the learning point of view for us. What exactly can we learn from this game? Just put yourself in the shoes of Magnus Carlsen. You have worked really hard. You are world number one. You have won loads of tournaments. You have achieved everything. The only thing missing from your bag is the world championship title. Now you have worked days and days for it, and finally, when at the end of 22 moves, when your opponent is repeating the position, when you can make an easy draw and win the world championship title, what would you do? Your position is slightly better, but I think 99 out of 100 people would definitely make a draw, but not Magnus Carlsen. He is a true fighter. He did not take the draw, he declined the draw. He played on and he almost got a winning position. I have heard Carlsen say in many interviews that he loves the game of chess. He loves the struggle in the game. And over here, he provided the perfect example for what he was saying. His words are not hollow. He did not change his principles when actually he could have won the highest title. He continued to fight on and the game ended in a draw after 65 moves and he became the world champion. It's really a huge lesson for each one of us. Many of us play the game of chess to earn titles, to earn medals, to earn trophies, to gain rating points, to make money. But remember, all this is very good. But finally, we play the game because we want to improve at the game of chess that we love so much. And Carlsen provides the perfect example of trying to enjoy the game more than looking at the results by applying it at the highest level. I think this was a befitting example by the world champion, and I'm glad that he became the world champion because we can get so many more examples from him in the future. So excellent game by Magnus Carlsen, and excellent fighting spirit. The 23-year-old Norwegian wonder kid is now the world champion. It's a great day for chess because the world number one and the world champion is the same person. Garry Kasparov himself said once that Magnus Carlsen is the force of nature whose time has come. And definitely in this match of 2013 against Vishy Anand, he turned out to be the superior player. Magnus Carlsen is now the world chess champion. And how do we feel about it? Personally, I think this is the best thing that could have happened to the chess world. Yes, true that Anand is an Indian, my countrymate, but the fact remains that Magnus Carlsen can popularize the game of chess to a greater extent than anyone else can. He has great fighting spirit. He has a build of a sports player. He loves to play different sports, and he has that certain X factor in him which attracts people to the game of chess. Just a few days after becoming the world champion, he kicked off the match between Arsenal and some team on his birthday on 30th November. Then he met Bill Gates. He played a game with Mark Zuckerberg. He is doing all sorts of things to promote the game of chess, something which I think the previous world champions never did. And that's why I can say that Magnus Carlsen becoming the world champion will truly make chess into a global sport, and it's great news for each one of us. I hope that you enjoyed these two parts of the 2013 World Championship match, and I hope to make few more videos in the near future on the great games played by Magnus Carlsen in the upcoming tournaments. Hope to see you soon, and thanks a lot.